Good day. I'm Jonathan Capehart, Associate Editor at The Washington Post and anchor of the Sunday Show on MSNBC. On behalf of the Texas Tribune, I am delighted to welcome you to the 2022 Texas Tribune Festival and this conversation one-on-one with Eric Adams. On January 1st of this year, Eric Adams was inaugurated the 110th mayor of New York City. Most immediately, he was elected twice as the Brooklyn Borough President, but for 20 years, he was a member of the New York City Transit Police and the NYPD. Mr. Mayor, thank you for being here.
Great to see you, Jonathan, and good opportunity to talk.
So just before we got on to do this interview, you put out a statement. New York Mayor Adams' statement on influx of asylum seekers arriving in New York City. I was going to talk about the economy first, but I want to talk about this first because you put out a statement because apparently on Monday, some 60 migrants were denied shelter in New York City, which goes against city law, where anyone who seeks a bed for shelter has to get shelter. You write, in the last few months, we have experienced an unprecedented surge of asylum seekers arriving from the southern border. To be more specific, they're arriving by the busloads from Texas as a result of action by Texas Governor Greg Abbott. Just as to start this conversation, your reaction to what the governor of Texas is doing, and is it appropriate for him to do this?
No, I don't believe so. Crises requires coordination. Governor Abbott did not coordinate at all. In fact, they first denied that they were sending migrants here. We received, Jonathan, over 10,000 migrants in the last few months. When we look at our right to shelter law here in the city, it is clear that it did not take into account inundation and being inundated at this level. And we are handling this crisis in a real way. We sat down. I was in D.C. yesterday meeting with our Senate delegation as well as the White House team, because this is a real crisis and it's going to take a coordinated effort to solve.
Now, I also notice in your statement, as a result, the city's prior practices, which never contemplated the busing of thousands of people into New York City, must be reassessed. What did you mean by that?
We have here in New York, one of the few cities where there's something called right to shelter. When someone is here, we have to give them shelter. We have a moral and legal obligation to do so. And that's something that we have done for years. But when the decision was made, clearly the judges did not believe that we will all of a sudden receive hundreds of individuals coming here to seek shelter with the time frame. Now, people are not being denied shelter. We need to be clear on that. There's a limited time frame that we have to do for children and families so they're not sleeping for days inside a facility. We have been doing an amazing job of dealing with the large number of 6 to 8 buses that are coming in. And it doesn't look like this is going to slow down at all. And so our legal team is really looking at the right to shelter ruling, and we have to revisit how it's done correctly.
Mr. Mayor, let me get you to address something that was in the New York Times story about the 60 men and their denial of shelter initially. It says another part of the problem, said Joshua Goldfein, a staff lawyer for the Legal Aid Society, which was supporting homeless, is that there are beds available in the system, but the city was not letting new arrivals use them because of bureaucracy and inflexible policies. At the time of this reporting, there was no response from City Hall, but here's your opportunity.
Because it's just so untrue. And I'm a little disappointed with the Legal Aid Society. I would hope that they will combine with us to find a legal remedy of this inhumane action of Governor Abbott, instead of playing this game of gotcha. It's clear that our administration, we have been doing the job of ensuring those arrivals who have gone through hours on a bus without getting proper medical care, food. We have been giving the services that's needed. And we can't continue to play this gotcha game. We should be instead saying we got each other and make sure we can solve this problem. And everyone needs to be on board and come together. And I'm just a little disappointed. I've worked with the Legal Aid Society for years, and I'm just disappointed in the posture that they have been taking thus far.
You know, one of the things I noticed is absent from this, from your statement that just came out, was an absence of woe is us. We need to change what we're doing. We can't accept these folks anymore. Instead, you continue the open arms of the Big Apple. My question is, how much of a strain, though, are the migrants putting on city services?
And you're right. At no time did we take the posture of woe is us. No, just the opposite. We have taken a continuing posture that we have a legal and moral obligation to do so. And this is a strange 1,400 school-age children we had to incorporate. It was done in a seamless manner. We must make sure that we have water, food, and other medical assistance. And anyone that doesn't believe that this is not a strain on city resources, it's just not true. But we have not turned away from that moral and legal obligation, and we're not going to. We're going to live up to the challenge that we are facing, but we do need help from the state, the federal government, and you know what, believe it or not, we need help from legal aid to put their legal minds with ours, and let's go after the real villain here, which is Governor Abbott, and not go after these city employees who have dedicated their lives to help people in need.
Well, let's talk about the federal government, because just the other day, I think it was yesterday during a speech, or a Tuesday, a speech at the National Press Club, where you said that you thought that you want migrants to be immediately granted working papers. What's the rationale for that?
Think about this for a moment. We're telling migrants who come here that you have to wait months before you have the authority to work. So what do they do for months? So who allows them to be able to provide for themselves? And this is a time when we have a shortage of nurses. So if we have a migrant that's a nurse, isn't this an excellent time? We have a shortage of translators, shortage of engineers, shortage of people who want to work in restaurants. It just makes no sense to state you're going to sit back for months without being able to provide for yourself, and we're going to leave that responsibility to the cities. That just makes no sense at all.
So then what's been the reaction from the White House? Because I would imagine this is something that has to be approved by Washington. Have you even gotten a reaction from the White House?
It has to be approved, a combination. The Department of Homeland Security, some of it is the lawmakers have to look at, but the White House, they have been a partner in attempting to address this issue. We spoke with them yesterday. They stated that they're going to look into this. Senator Schumer has been amazing, as well as Senator Gillibrand and Congressman Nadler. They realize that this is a real crisis that we're facing as a city, and we're all coming together as a team to address it.
So you just mentioned Department of Homeland Security. I noticed you didn't say that you've had conversations with DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Have you been in contact with him about this worker permit proposal or any other ideas to deal with the migrants who are being bussed up from Texas?
Yeah, our team, we are not leaving any stone unturned and speaking with everyone. We have been speaking with everyone on the state and federal level, as well as the homeless services operations. And so, everyone is being communicated with, because we're going to need a team effort to deal with this crisis. Crisis brings about coordination, and that is what we're going to do.
Let's talk about what I wanted to start this conversation with, and that is the economy. On Monday, you announced 3% spending cuts in the current budget and 4.75% reductions in the FY 2024 budget. The next day, new, still record high inflation was reported, which then led the Dow to plummet more than 1,200 points. New York City is dependent on Wall Street. But don't your budget actions portend trouble ahead for the broader economy?
Yes, and it's extremely alarming. when we look at it. And that is why we must make smart decisions and practical decisions. And we're looking at all of our agencies to play a role. And this is not new in what I've been stating. I knew we were coming up with some tough economic times. During my campaign, I stated that we were going to go in and find the fat in government and make sure that we are giving taxpayers what they need. And so calling for a 3% peg during the last budgetary cycle, we're going to look to do a 3%, as you indicated, and a 4% in the out years, because we're looking at a potential $10 billion budget deficit. And if we don't start making the smart choices now, we're going to reach a cliff. And I'm not going to do that into the city. We're going to provide the services, no layoffs, but at the same time, we're going to become more efficient as a city to produce the product that New Yorkers deserve.
A $10 billion budget deficit projected for 2024?
In our out years, throughout the next couple of years, that is what is predicted in the out years, that it could reach a $10 billion budget deficit.
And if memory serves, because I was in the New York Daily News editorial board for 9 years, there's always sort of a structural $1.8 to $2 billion deficit that always seems to be there at budget time. But are you sure you're going to be able to meet all the obligations that the city must meet, fill this budget hole, and still not have layoffs?
Yes, I believe strongly, if you lay off, you are adding to the problem. Particularly, many of the city employees are Black and brown women who are the primary bread earners for their families. We don't want to aggravate a crisis by laying off. We believe that we can provide the services we need, make sure that we have the right manpower to carry out the functions that the city needs to provide. These are difficult times, and it's about navigating ourselves through the turbulent waters so we can get to the other side, and we could do it by making smart decisions.
So given what you said about the out years for New York City's budget, are you part of the alarm out there that we are indeed, the nation overall, headed towards a recession?
I hope not, and I leave that up to the smarter economists than I am. That was not my favorite topic in college, and so they're going to have to make these decisions. We know inflation is real, is here. We know that it is becoming more and more expensive to live in the inner cities. These are real challenging times, and we have to be extremely smart as we make these important decisions.
Mr. Mayor, let's talk more about your speech at the press club. In it, you said, quote, ending gun violence and stopping the scourge of illegal guns is the, quote, defining mission as the mayor of America's largest city. While you called on the press to do more to expose gun manufacturers, I'm wondering your thoughts on the proactive step being taken by California Governor Gavin Newsom he's using the Texas abortion law as a model to sue gun manufacturers. Could you do something similar in New York City?
Well, we sued a number of ghost gun manufacturers. 3 of them came to the table and settled. Many of our ghost gun manufacturers were producing these deadly products, sending them to New York. And we came and partnered with the Attorney General and we sued them. And we believe there's a pathway to even sue some of the manufacturers who are selling some of the other illegal guns. And I laid out a blueprint on the 3 areas that we need to look at. We need to name the gun. We need to name these companies' CEOs and heads and attach them to the crime. And we need to follow the money on who's actually selling these guns. We have disconnected those who are participating in the overproliferation of guns in our communities and selling them to the wrong people in many cases. It's time to really expose this the way we did with opioid and the way we did with cigarettes previously.
Mr. Mayor, crime is spiking across the country, including New York. But what is the nature of the increase in New York City, which once led the nation in the decrease in crime?
Jonathan, you know what's interesting, and I'm sure you recall back in the early 90s, when we were dealing with almost over 2,000 homicides a year, 98,000 robberies, and the equivalent amount of felonious assaults. The team was in place. The judiciary was on the same team, making sure dangerous people were not on our streets. Our prosecutors were prosecuting crimes. Our police were making appropriate arrests. Our lawmakers were making strong, firm laws. That has changed. It appears as though, for the most part, just the police are carrying out the public safety aspect. We removed over 5,000 guns off our streets. We have an increase in record number of felonious crimes that people are arrested for, record number of gun arrests, decrease in homicides, decrease in shootings. But the problem is too many dangerous repeated offenders are coming back on our streets, such as burglary. From January to June, 211 people who were arrested for burglary was arrested 3 times. And the same thing with these petty crimes. You have over 899 people that were arrested for thefts in stores were arrested 3 times compared to 2017. 25% of the people arrested for burglary are rearrested in 60 days. So this catch, release, repeat system that we're under is decimating our crime. Let me share this one point, Jonathan, that's crucial. We have adapted a policy in the city and country protecting people who commit crimes. We've moved away from protecting people who are the victims of crimes. I don't know what's going on that all of a sudden our focus is on, let's make sure the person who commits that homicide, commits that shooting, commits that burglary, that we do everything we can to protect them. But we forgot about the individuals who are the victims of those crimes, the victims of those burglaries. And that is the wrong direction we're going in as a city and as a country.
Well, Mr. Mayor, one of the things you talked about reinstating as part of this effort of reducing crime and going after the perpetrators of crime was bringing back plainclothes units. There's talk at one point about bringing back stop and frisk. How do you balance, not just balance, but guarantee that people who are looking to police for safety don't become victims of police harassment?
Without a doubt. And that's so important because you cannot stop tyranny by using tyranny. And that is unacceptable. And I'm clear on this. Number one, we never call for bringing back abusive stop and frisk. The stop, question, and frisk was a tool that was incorrectly used. When it's used effectively, you can identify those individuals who are committing crimes. And that's what we're doing. The tool has been approved by the Supreme Court. It's not the abuse of it. We were abusing it by targeting people based on zip codes and ethnicity. That is unacceptable. Number two, I made it clear on the campaign trail. We were going to bring back an anti-gun unit that will have a modified version of civilian attire and unmarked vehicles. They're back on the street. They're doing an amazing job. They have contributed to the release of guns. And the number one reason people believe that we would not have abusive policing, because they said, we know the man. We know Eric Adams. He was an advocate for 20 years, over 20 years fighting for the correct form of policing. We can have public safety and justice. We don't have to have a trade-off. And that is what we're doing in this city.
Mr. Mayor, in the time that we have left, I've got to get you to talk about national politics, especially since you are the Democratic mayor of New York City. Your election was viewed as perhaps a harbinger of where the party might be going. Let's say at the start of the summer, the conversation about Democrats nationally and their prospects in the midterm elections was decidedly dour. Today, just after Labor Day, Democrats are really, really enthusiastic, encouraged by the signs and their chances in the midterm elections, not just for Congress and for House and Senate, but governorships, Senate races. Do you share that same enthusiasm?
Yes, I do. And I believe that President Biden is the leader that people are rallying behind, the Biden Harris team. But more than that, I believe that the country has viewed and we have witnessed what this Republican Party is bringing. Those two Supreme Court decisions in a 1 week period, one took away the rights of women, another took away the rights of us being safe by having the open carry law. That hit us all hard as we wrestle with these crucial issues about public safety and overproliferation of guns and the rights of women. I think that really sent a strong message, and I think it's a very clear message, and I'm optimistic. Listen, if we are radically practical, we are going to be able to bring our country in the right direction. And I always say the far, far left and the far, far right, they're co-conspirators in dividing our country. And I think that we have a progressive middle that is clear that they want to have a country where we raise healthy children and families.
And that Supreme Court, the second Supreme Court decision you were talking about related to guns invalidated New York's gun law that had been on the books for about 100 years. Mr. Mayor, we are running out of time. So I've got to end this conversation where we began, and that's with Texas and Texas Governor Abbott. Few questions. One, have you been in contact with Governor Abbott since he started sending busloads of migrants to New York City?
Our team reached out and his team and communicated with his team and stated that, can you let us know so we can coordinate the effort? They refused to let us know. They continue to send the buses. It's clear that Governor Abbott is attempting to make this into a political prop, using people who are seeking to live the American dream as the prop for him. And it's just really unfortunate. It's inhumane, it's un-American, and it's unethical, his behavior.
What do you say to those on the right who say, you know, that's what you get, New York City and also Washington, D.C. and Chicago. You've got these liberal laws, so you deal with it.
Well, I think the birth of the liberal laws, because no matter who they are from the right, they came from somewhere. And I'm sure that when they came to either Ellis Island or they came here to seek the American dream, they did not want anyone to treat them the same way we're treating these migrant and asylum seekers. All of us came from somewhere. So anyone that states that these asylum seekers should go back to their own country, they will if we go back to our own country. We all came from somewhere, and we need to embrace this whole concept of allowing people to come to this country and live out the American dream.
And if you did have an opportunity to talk to Texas Governor Greg Abbott, what would you say to him in 30 seconds?
Well, I would tell him, look into his ancestry, find out his lineage and see where his parents came from or his grandparents, and have that in mind when you state that within 24 hours, one must get out of Texas. We have to come together and solve this national crisis. That coordination is important. Every city that is available to absorb some of the migrants and asylum seekers should participate. This is an American crisis, and as Americans, we come together in crises, not tear ourselves apart.
Mayor Eric Adams, the 110th mayor of New York City, thank you for this one-on-one conversation.
Thank you very much. Good to see you, Jonathan.
You too.